Hello and welcome to Real Life, Real Love. This is our 12th episode. And today, Haley and I will be talking about sex life, which is so much fun. And so if you're not over 18, please scroll on. We are going to be talking about what to do like when sex isn't feeling good for you. If you're someone who's struggled to have orgasms at all, or maybe even just infrequently, you're not able to make yourself predictably reach a climax, enjoy sex with your partner, any of those things, because a lot of times what we have found happens is people like to go and try to look into the technique, try to figure out physically what's going on. And while that matters, and we can talk to it a little bit today, we want to talk more to what we feel like the root issue is and how to handle it from the inside out so that it'll just manifest naturally for you. So I am Sarah Michelle, and I'm a sex, love, and intimacy coach. I help men and women call in their partners, soulmates, and I also help men and women with their sex lives and their relationships once they're already in it, communication, polarity, those sort of things. You want to take a moment and introduce yourself, Haley?
Yeah, hi, I'm Hayley Henderson. I'm a style coach. I help women overhaul their wardrobe and wear clothes every single day that they feel their best in, which is going to bring out the best in you. It's going to help, like your wardrobe literally can help boost your confidence on low days. You can use color to wake up.
I totally agree. I love putting on hot pink when I want to wake up.
It is such an evoking color. It brings up so much fun and abundance and joy. And we have so many most people have good memory associations with it.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's dive right in today then. And let's start talking about our sex lives. So let's start with the first thing and let's address orgasms. The number one thing I think that people don't realize about orgasms is they think it's natural, like that it just happens. But actually what happens is we train our bodies to orgasm. So if for some reason you were a child that didn't naturally explore, whether it was because you were told not to, or you just didn't know about it, or it doesn't really matter the reason. If you weren't naturally exploring your body and growing up like through those phases, you didn't naturally train your body, which is fine. You're not like behind the ball or anything. You can train it now. But that can be part of the big issue as adults. It can also be part of the issue I find when women have been single for a long period of time. They get used to self-pleasure. And let's just be honest. Like when we're running low on time and we just want the release because we're not there to make this big emotional connection with someone else or whatever, like we figure out our routine and we can get there pretty quickly. And what happens is we train our body to orgasm that way. And it's not as familiar with the other ways. So then when you hop into partnered sex at some point, it can feel really frustrating because you're not getting the same sensation. Maybe you're not getting an orgasm at all. And it can feel like you can just feel impatient with yourself. So there's other things that happen. Do you want to speak to anything from, I see you smiling. Do you want to speak to anything from your personal experience? Because I know you've done a lot of work in this area as well.
Yeah, I know for a lot of people, it's so taboo. It's taboo in our family. So there's so many things we could talk about. But from my personal experience, I thought like a few years ago, I was just never going to enjoy sex. I actually had come to that conclusion and I hadn't told anybody and I hadn't thought anything of even coming to that conclusion until, I don't know, somebody brought up a subject one day and I was like, I said something and they looked at me very strange and I was like, oh, maybe that's not a conclusion that I had even really, really realized I'd come to. And so I broke down what was it that I was looking at, why was I at this conclusion, etc. And I broke it down while I was single. So it was just a conversation with somebody, and I ended up looking into Kim Anami's programs. And I did, before I did her programs, I just went through some of her online content, and I did her 30. So this is when I was like a stiff board. I didn't ever self-pleasure or anything like that. And I did, she had a challenge. It was do 30 days of orgasms.
So you didn't start self-pleasuring until you were an adult.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was so fascinating. So at the time, and I had no idea at this point in time how much like who we are on the inner. So I had, I'd worked in fashion for many years, and I was working in just an office job because I was a new mom, and all this stuff, and things weren't working out in relationships, and I had no idea until this point how much how we feel and who we are contributes to our daily life. So when we're feeling good, our day is good. And it was in this 30-day challenge that even there was this one tradesperson that I worked with basically hated me, and nobody could work out why. And I wasn't upset about it. It is what it is. I just had to assign him tasks, and that's it. And I started noticing that even men would like get really close to me. And I'm a personal space advocate. I'm like, get back. And they would get very close to me. And one day when this particular person like came really close to the point where I was like leaning away, and I was like, something's going on here. So I started looking it up, and I started looking up how like that inner, like our pleasure when we are in as a woman in a state of our femininity and our pleasure, because to have the orgasm, you've got to be in a state of surrender normally.
Mm-hmm.
To have like a good one. So there's obviously varying degrees. And then once you're past that point and you're just like bliss, and you're like walking around and you're just like, might wear lipstick today, should I wear some heels? Like things just flow. And in those moments, I started to really, it was almost like I was receiving the world instead of like pushing forward and being a stern physical person. And I just thought, I think I should take this more seriously. It like opened this massive can of worms for me. And we also, this is not exciting, but we are not also compatible with every single other body. Like one of the things that I discovered was I may actually not be compatible with the partners that I had been with. Like gross, some of it, like as in one person that I have been with for we were together for 6 months, so it wasn't very long at all. I started to smell, and I went through all of these things where I went to the pharmacist, because I traditionally don't go to doctors and do a lot of medicine. I'm a quite natural orientated person, and so I'll go to the pharmacist and I'll get expert advice because it's for free and it's fast, and I don't have to wait in the doctor's office and take time off work, etc. And I had tried a few different things because I was like, I don't understand. Like, I don't have thrush. I don't have an infection. I know my body, but it just smells. That was like exploring, the balance of flora and stuff down there. And it wasn't until after we broke up, and it was within the next couple of weeks, that I was like, oh, was that him? Like, were we just not compatible? Because it had not even dawned on me how much effort I was going to thinking something was going on with my body. And then it actually, I'm pretty sure it was him.
It was your chemistry, yeah, between the two of you.
Yeah, which is what, we only worked out for 6 months, and we were actually going to break up at the 4-month mark. So we were obviously not going to work out. And this is probably the longest explanation ever. But I think that there are elements that come into this. Like, one, not everybody is going to necessarily enjoy sex. 2, there are things that you can do you may not explore it by yourself, or you may not, understand those masculine, feminine polarities, etc., etc. So many things that can contribute, like as in you may not be, like your biochemistry, your physiology may not be compatible with a person. And I don't know what somebody would do if they were in a long-term loving relationship and they were physically not compatible and carry on down that road. It's not the right words to say. I would say, I think it's important to look at it. It's not like I don't know what you would do, as in I don't have the prescription of what to go do. And I think it's important to explore for yourself. Like, I don't have the advice of what to do. This is a better way to say it.
Well, and that's kind of like the nugget that we're trying to go back to is, I said at the beginning, we don't necessarily want to talk about technique and stuff today, even though that's part of it, but it's not the foundation. So it's not where you start. Where you start is the feminine energy that you mentioned. And feminine energy is embodied. So you have to get comfortable in your own body. And that means starting to love yourself and all that sort of stuff. I had a client one time that I was working with, and she came to me and she said, she was leaving her marriage and she was dating someone new. And she said, like, when they first started, they were having all this sex and it was great and good. And then her divorce process started happening, and it was like everything shut down. She didn't even want to have sex with this guy. And she's like, I'm afraid I'm going to lose this relationship if I can't figure out how to have sex with him again. And so that's why we started working together. And honestly, as she started talking, she had had a lot of sexual trauma and stuff like that in her past. And although I'm not like trauma certified, I'm not a therapist, what we were able to do was get her to the point where she was seeing a therapist on her own, where she was comfortable touching herself. And the first thing we started with was literally clothing on, just laying down in bed with her left hand over just over your whole pelvic area, right? So you just lay it, and then you put your right hand on top. Now, I do that left hand and then right hand symbolically, because your left side is feminine energy. And so that's touching your pelvic area, your vulva, all that sort of stuff gently. And then the right side is masculine. So that is your protection. That's creating your safety. And I told her that so that she would kind of have that thought process and that energy as she did it. And all she was supposed to do was hold that space and breathe. And when she first started, she could only hold for about 30 seconds and then be done. And that was fine. Like, we never said, have to do it for a minute, or when you start crying, breathe through it and stick with it, or anything. Everything was like, go at your own pace, trust your body. And within 3 weeks, it slowly progressed to the point where we're like, okay, we're going to take off the pants, and all you're going to do is, again, we're still just holding. There's nothing else. And within 3 weeks, she contacted me and she's like, I decided to pleasure myself today, and I got all the way to climax. And I was like, I love that so much. I know her end goal was to be with her boyfriend, and they eventually got there. But like within 3 weeks, she was able to transition from completely shut down to, okay, I can do this with myself. I can be alone. I can be comfortable in my body. And the more you can be comfortable in your own body, the easier it is to explore your body with a partner, because like you said, every partner is different. There are parts that make you incompatible with different people or whatever, but a lot of it is just like, you're going to have a different physical fit with each person. You're going to have different energies coming together. Like, some people are more outgoing, some people are more introverted, some people want to talk more, some people don't want to make any eye contact. Like, it's all over the board. And so you have to be comfortable enough with yourself that you feel comfortable communicating and advocating for yourself. You have to feel comfortable setting boundaries. I mean, I don't want to go too far into that part of the talk, because that really isn't what we're going to talk about today. But if you don't feel safe, if you don't feel respected, to a certain extent, right? Like, we know that like within BDSM communities and stuff like that, sometimes there's degradation and things that are intentional, but there's still a level of respect with that, because they've decided ahead of time, this is what we're doing, and this is the container it's within, So yeah, like, you have to feel safe and respected. Otherwise, you can't get there. And I know I've been in those situations. I didn't necessarily feel unsafe in the sense that like I feared for my life or something like that. But I felt unsafe in the sense that I didn't feel like I could be fully present as myself.
Yeah.
If I made a weird noise, I would be judged or something like that. And that was so maybe it was a little bit more of like an emotional safety than it was a physical safety, which actually kind of brings up that there's different types of safety. Even if you don't feel financially safe, which might be a weird thing to bring into sex, but the truth is like, if you don't feel financially stable or you don't feel stability in these other areas of your life, as a woman, it's really hard to come to the bedroom and let it all go, because you're still up here in your mind. And in order for you to do this in a feminine way, you've got to get down into your body and let your mind just, it's almost like meditation, you know, the idea of like your thoughts will come and go or whatever, but you don't attach to any of them. Yeah. I left you speechless, huh?
Yeah, there's so many things about it. And I mean, the stuff that people don't typically talk about that's more taboo is, you know, the partners that you're with, where their experience and education comes from, or the expectation that you are pure and have no experience, but you know everything. I had a partner that I was with that turned out to be quite abusive. I didn't know at the time. He had this high expectation on me to perform. And I don't have the, you know, experience with many partners. And so he would bombard me with videos, images, like from his email, from his text. He would call me, he would tell me like all the time, like, we should do this and we should do that. And it was all the physical, mechanical, masculine type stuff. And I obviously have a body, so I'm not struggling to have a body, but I was struggling like mentally and emotionally to connect these pieces and to feel safe. And he was so like forceful and demanding, even just with this information. So I would shut down. I'd be like, I can't do that. And like that push and that expectation sometimes is enough when somebody, you know, pushes you in a certain way and you literally, like, your words tell you don't feel comfortable, which means you are not going to feel comfortable and just be like, okay, cool, let's just do anything with my most private, closest to me. Like, you know, a man physically has to get inside of you. And if you don't feel safe, like, you safeguard yourself. Like, you know, your hips may lock up, you may get headaches, you may be dehydrated, you may be exhausted, you may physically, your muscles just be like, hell to the no. And many parts of you, like, especially with, because a big physical part of you that is going to orgasm is a muscle orientated situation, and your, you know, mind and emotions connect with that muscle to create that pleasure. And it's like so many things that got, like, the car can't run without the tires and, you know, the axle and the steering wheel and the petrol and, you know, all the electrical and etc., all that stuff that works together to make it work. Not saying we're a car, but I mean, we're just as complex. Like, it's not one thing, and it's not just the physical, which often people will say to you, and men who are not connected in that way will think it's physical. They'll think, yeah, you just have to look into my eyes and it's going to work. Or, you know, people that don't accept you for who you are, you may not be an eye contact person, or you may not, you know, be a person who makes a lot of noise, but it doesn't mean to say that you're not experiencing pleasure, or could maybe not experience pleasure just because you're not making noise. Like, there is like the full scope of potentiality and so many things that go into it. And it's for men and for women. It's not just women who are all these things. But
so the partner that you mentioned, do you happen to know, I'm going to speak to this regardless of what your answer is, but do you happen to know if he watched porn, what you would consider regularly?
Yeah.
Okay, because everything you're describing is exactly like the textbook definition of how your brain changes when you're when you're watching porn. I don't think what people realize is that porn it rewires your brain in an addictive way, the same way that like taking drugs or drinking alcohol regularly, even eating too much sugar regularly, like those sort of things do. This gambling, porn does the exact same thing because it activates the reward center in our brain. And so what can happen, I had sex with someone who used to watch porn regularly, and every time you tell this story, every time we talk about it, it reminds me of, because the way I would always say it is that, like, it feels like you're like we're performing. I mean, I use that word too. Like, it doesn't feel like we are having sex together and we're connected. It feels like we're performing, and I don't know where you're at, what is going on. And it took me a while. I started studying. I actually just came across this book from TikTok. It was called Your Brain on Porn. And it's this guy that studies it and has figured out that basically, like, the simplest way to put it is that when you are the person who's watching porn all of the time, instead of being in the experience like two people in real life would be, you're watching the experience from the outside.
Yes.
There's a voyeuristic perspective or energy to it. And so as you learn to climax, you learn to climax from being on the outside of the situation. So then when you are with a partner, in fact, some men start experiencing like erectile dysfunction and things like that, or premature ejaculation. Like, it can go either way, but basically they can't control what's going on anymore because they've trained themselves to orgasm to what they're seeing on the screen. And women can do the same. So I don't advocate for women. I'm not against porn as long as it's like responsible porn usage and you are aware, like can make a conscious decision about it. Let's say that. But I don't advocate for women to go and watch it as part of their self-pleasuring routine because it can happen to women too. Men are just more prone to it because men are more prone to needing the visual. So they just navigate to it more readily than a woman does. But it's the same thing. And well, I'm not going to share your business. You can chime in here with whatever you want to chime in with. But I did a thing, I think it was 2 years ago, in my Facebook group, The Peachy Pussy. And we did no vibrator September. And most women didn't stick with it. Some women flat out just told me, nope, not giving up my vibrator. But the idea is that you train your body how to orgasm. And when you're using vibrators, it desensitizes those nerve endings because it's too much stimulation for those nerve endings. And so if you notice, over time, you have to turn that vibrator up more and more and more. And then you get to the point where you can't climax during partnered sex unless you're also using a toy during partnered sex. And it's like, it disconnects the two of you. Now, the good news is if you're watching this and you're like, shit, that is me. You can absolutely turn this around. And I had someone turn it around in that 30 days that we did. So it'll be dependent on your body and your usage and whatever, but you absolutely can just get rid of the vibrator and start learning how to have sex with yourself. And I think when I got rid of my vibrator, it was the most infuriating thing. I think it took me 2 weeks before I finally figured out how to pleasure myself, just myself, without a toy or anything. And it was so frustrating because I'd be like so wired and ready to go, and I couldn't get myself there. But you get there and you learn it because, like I've said 100 times already this episode, you train your body. Yes. So it's essentially like building a new muscle. You're just starting something new. Did you want to add something before I go on?
I was going to say, it was the exact same experience for me. And I remember learning about this desensitization and this mechanical stuff. This was before this partner we were talking about before, which infuriated that partner because I didn't want to use toys and I don't use battery operated stuff. So I did keep my toys, but I took the batteries out. And I just learned how to, like, all the things around it. And I started to pay attention to, because I'm a visual person, but I also want to understand how things learn. So I started to listen to what men had to say and like what they find enjoyable. And it's for them, they just like want like to just touch. Like they're not necessarily that intense. Like somebody who wants to like be present with you and just be near your body and to be, potentially orgasmic, but may not necessarily have that as the goal, but it's actually the goal is to be with you and to have pleasure. Those types of experiences, the man is just like, I just want to be near. Okay. Like sometimes that's enough for them. Just saying like, why is it not enough for me? I'm meant to be sensitive. I'm told my whole life I'm sensitive. So what am I missing? I don't understand. And the more I paid attention to like these little subtle cues, the more I was like, interesting. So one, I think there's this like, I gathered information that it was sometimes partner orientated, sometimes it was me orientated, sometimes it was like other things. And I was like, oh.
But all
So
this comes back to you.
yeah. And it's like,
Exploring with yourself and knowing your own body.
yeah, like how you feel about it, like what you think about it, and how your body is experiencing things, and definitely getting rid of the battery portion of toys was hard. And now I don't use toys at all.
Me either.
And it just means you're free in some ways. Like, you can have a moment. You don't need to like have a mechanical approach to it. You can, and do you know what? I don't even know what it was. It was a few years ago. This lady was talking about orgasms, and she was talking about how you can be orgasmic doing anything. And I was like, what? She's like, even washing. I was like, tell me more. I have washing to do. And the more I explored this and started to pay attention to what are the subtle things that are triggered in me or what she's talking about, it was more like, so what if everything we learned was not necessarily factual or applies to me or to everybody? And talking to girlfriends and having these brave conversations, because it feels like bravery. It feels like if you to say to somebody, I've never had an orgasm, like they lose their mind and they don't understand. Or if you say,
they make it seem like you're wrong.
yeah,
like there's something wrong with you.
And there can be so many things. It can literally be something like you are allergic to condoms or contraceptives, or the stuff that the spermicide stuff, or like the lubricants on the outside of those toys, etc. And so it's not even necessarily like an emotional thing. Sometimes it's literally a physical thing. The steam that is involved in the moment, you may be allergic to, or your body may be having a moment. And, as we always talk about, you're a woman who has a cycle. So you are not going to be mechanistically approaching this as in, well, it's Tuesday, so we have sex on Tuesday. Your body is going to be like, peace out. Like, I don't care.
That's a really good point, though, about the cycles. Is like, if you are going to be someone who struggles to orgasm and you're getting going, or you're going to be someone who's going to try to come off of porn or come off of vibrator usage, that sort of stuff, paying attention to your cycle would be really helpful, because you certainly don't want to start that the second half of your cycle when you're the least turned on, when your hormones are starting to slow down and you're coming into your period cycle. You want to be doing it in that first 14 days ish. I guess it depends on how long your cycle is, but building up to ovulation. Maybe even starting like the week right around ovulation if you're just going to do it a few days here and there. I'm a big advocate for just being super gentle with yourself, so I don't usually jump into anything. I think you were the one who said, and this might have been the challenge you were referring to earlier, but I remember talking to you before, and I thought you did like a 30-day orgasm challenge where you were supposed to climax 30 days in a row.
Yeah.
I don't even think that sounds pleasurable. And isn't that weird coming from a sex coach? But to me, it's like, no, I don't even want to do it. So to me, that would be like eating ice cream every day. Like, what? I know.
It wasn't as bad as it sounds. Like, it seemed like such a challenge. And at first I was, because there's like that, I must get to that point. But it started because I wanted to learn and I wanted to be gentle with myself. It was like, it went from being like, I have a goal and I need to get to it, to more like, how am I going to get there? What if every day?
Walk us through that. Like, what was the transformation over the 30 days?
Well, the first thing was we weren't meant to use any toys or any battery operated stuff. And I was like, okay, oh, what am I going to do? Oh my God. And it was more like, and because,
were you allowed to have sex with other people in order to do it, or did it have to be self-pleasure?
Do you know, I can't actually remember because it was so long ago. But I just remember, like, I was a mom. I was working full time. Like, I had a young daughter, and I was a single mom, so I was like flat out busy. And my daughter has anaphylactic allergy, so I need to often prepare 2 meals. But like, I don't want to eat what she's eating, and she can't eat what I'm eating, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I want some like spice in my food or something, and she's a kid; she doesn't want that stuff. So I was busy preparing meals from scratch. I was busy all day. There was like life. And I'd get to the end of the day and be like, oh, weird. Like I'm a committed person and I committed to this challenge and I'd be like, I completely forgot about it. Now what am I going to do? Oh my God. And so it started to be like, well, what are the things that I like? Was my first, I have never really thought about this. What
Mhm.
do I like? And so I, explore experiences and memories that I had experienced to that point. And this is the things that started to really break down. And I would notice some days it was easier, other days it was harder. And I was like, do I have to? No. I'm making my own rules. I am making my own rules. Well, what do I really like? And I kept coming back to what do I like? Was like this was the key takeaway of it. And it wasn't until like sort of around the 20-day mark where I was starting to notice how people were around me. Because I up until that point, it was me. It was about me. And it was like, structuring my day in a way where what was happy for me today, what was pleasurable for me today, and realizing that I had stopped wearing clothes that I love and that's my jam. I had stopped. I mean, I'd never explored my own exploration stuff. I hadn't ever had so many of the thoughts. So for me, the 30-day challenge wasn't I mean, the original point of it was because I wanted to get back in touch with myself and I wanted to be able to do that because I couldn't orgasm. And so, like, it was the biggest challenge ever. And when I started asking these questions and getting towards the end of the 30 days, like, I was so keen to have a day off because I was learning so much about myself as a woman, as a person, other people, what I had given up, how I don't prioritize myself, where pleasure comes from in my life, that it's not like, it's not the toy and it's not my hand and it's not necessarily my body. There is so much that mentally goes into it. There is so much emotionally that goes into it. There's so much like the way our life is structured, like we prepare ourselves for success or we don't. And it was sort of interesting on like day 31 where I was like, I don't have to today. Do I want to?
Yeah.
Like different questions. And I was like, weird, interesting. And so, and it was hard to do a whole month, to be really honest. Like, as in every single day, like, this is my goal. And this is part of how I realized we're different on different days. And so I took away so much more than I was prepared for from that, where like, it sounds like a 30-day orgasm challenge is all about orgasms, but it's actually about you. And it's about like your physical body, your mental body, your emotional body, how these all tie in together. If you're a mom, if you're working, if you're tired, if you're not looking after yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, energetically, in any way, shape, or form, you don't want to do that. And it wasn't about performing, which was the other thing I found interesting. It was like, well, do I like the light on or off? Do I want some scented candles or I don't? Like, what are the elements that I can prepare or not prepare?
That is a super good point, and something that I teach in. I have a oh, I don't even know the name of the course now, but anyway, where I'm teaching women to solo sex. And anyway, we talk about feng shui in your space, basically getting it ready so that it's a. I kind of like mix tantric space and feng shui. I think they're very similar traditions. Uh, as far as getting the physical space ready to go. And we talk about that in there and like making sure that the space feels safe. I think that's a big one for moms, to be honest, because I don't think any of us want a child walking in on us. And
Yeah.
so I personally find myself like not doing it if I have the kids in the house. But there's some people like you who are full-time single mom, like you can't have that option like I have. And there's some days I want to do it anyway when they're here, but I find myself not doing it because I don't have a lock on my door. So it's like, what do you do to get the space to feel safe? Do you need to pick it up a little bit? Because if you can't relax when it's all dirty, or if you can't get physically comfortable, because there's like a lot of single women will like fill up the other side of their bed with books, clothing they've taken off, whatever, journals. And then they don't actually have space on the bed to move freely to whatever position they want to and stuff like that. And like you said, candles are great. I think every woman looks fantastic in candlelight. So if you have any sort of body issues that you're learning to love yourself through, candlelight is an amazing way to start to see how beautiful your body is without the harshness of, well, especially a lot of times in our bedrooms and stuff like that, we have the light coming from here and it's like, it's just harsh and it accentuates parts that you're already struggling to accept and stuff. So go with candlelight. But yeah, important the whole spaces.
Well, the color experience. So a lot of people may or may not know that there is there's an array of colored lights. So you don't just have light. You've got daylight, you've got warm light, you've got cool light, you've got a whole bunch of different kinds of lights. And then the ways that, and I don't know what you've got in America, but there are different ways that you can buy lights here. Like there are different kinds of the way that the actual light bulb works. And you can tell I work with an electrical company, can't you? So, so those all have an effect on you to the degree, like when I was working for this electrical company, I didn't know, but the type of lights that were above the potatoes in the produce section in the supermarket will age or help the potatoes live longer on the shelf. Because some wrong lights on, and I remember my boss just across the room, this is so many years ago, like yelled out about it, and I was like, sorry, John, what? He's like, oh, this type of light is going to age the potatoes and such, put it in there. And I was like, does that do it to humans?
I was just watching something about how harmful LED lights are for us. And we knew years ago that you shouldn't be putting fluorescent light bulbs in office spaces and stuff like that because it increased the prevalency of migraines. Yeah, so I totally agree. I don't think it's something we talk about, but...
And if you're working on your body, like in the spectrum of wanting to be more... this is going to sound so silly, but more sensitive. Because if you're wanting to orgasm without a toy or mechanicalistically or do it by yourself, you're really building a type of sensitivity, which is why all of these complex things go into it. And if you're building your sensitivity, this is when you become available to be like, I don't like that color light, or I don't like having an artificial light. I prefer, or the other thing I was going to say. So if you have like a daylight colored light turned on, but in your mind, you don't feel like you're the type of person who likes to have daylight sex, these things can actually play a part. So at nighttime, sometimes if the moon is out, have your curtains open.
I love that.
At the window. Or, find ways where, like, if you have a serious block of land and you're safe to go outside, or, like, these are all, they sound ritualistic, and, I always think back to what did people do forever ago, and was there actually more reason behind it? And often there is. We function on cycles, especially as women, and if we have a daylight colored light hanging above us as though it's the sun, and we don't like having day sex, that may play a part. And you're allowed to have pitch black. Nobody has to see anything. Like, if that's what you like it. If you want candlelight, if you want something like some nice smells around you, if you like to have a hot bath to just like, just like help your muscles relax, and then like roll onto bed and just like maybe put down a sheet or whatever, like a towel. And like there are different things that you can help get into the mood and explore it, which is why that was what the 30-day challenge was about, was like finding not how to accomplish the 30 days, but it was like literally like, what do I like? How do I like it? And going through all of these different levels of experience of who am I? And can this be different? And what? Like there are so many questions that you come up with that you are not ready for. Like, especially if you're like 35, 40 or 45, whatever is your age, and you think, well, I've got to this point, I know what I like. Be ready to not know and ask the questions. All I've got to say, if that's the type of thing you like to do, or if you've always used toys and you decide you don't want to anymore because you would like to build a sensitivity, and it's not a sensitivity. specifically, it's a receptivity to this experience, potential. It's an experience.
I personally feel like, I know we're going to be wrapping up soon, so I wanted to add this in. Uh, when I stopped using the vibrating toys and learned how to do this, I actually found that I enjoyed my orgasms way more, because for me, when I was using a toy, the orgasm did come on quickly, but it came on quickly, intensely, so it like peaked, plummeted. And because I couldn't stay with it, it was too intense to stay with, like would literally be painful if I tried to stay with it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when I learned how to use my hands to do it, I could build to it, and then I could adjust the entire time to like get up to the orgasm and then maintain it for a little bit and then come off of it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's like another benefit of, I think there's a lot of benefits to learning how to do it yourself. And not that, again, like I'm not an advocate for toys or porn, but I'm not against them. I just want people to be conscious and aware of the choices they're making so that they know. I mean, it's like, is sugar bad for you? Table sugar? Yeah. Should I tell you never to eat chocolate cake again? No. But you need to be aware of what's going on when you're eating the chocolate cake so that you can decide for yourself, do I want to eat the chocolate cake right now or should I wait?
Yeah, well, you're a different person. If somebody says, don't do this, that's like a parental regulatory role. And for us to, which is what I think we're all doing, is to grow forward consciously as humans. So if you're able to forget who it is, but it's like, there was this quote that I saw on this quantum physics training talking about how, you know, the most intelligent mind is able to entertain a thought without believing it. Like, so it's like,
oh yes, for sure.
take in this information and be like, am I, is it, could it, would it? And it's like not about following. And this is why we have our conversations and why we started our channel, because this is not about being told what to do. This is about having conversations and sparking an interest or exploring ideas and like letting it go through your mind, as in like, do I like toys? Oh, yeah. Like it gives you an option to like entertain the idea without necessarily believing it or holding on to it. And it's not about being told what you can and can't do and following rules. It's about, who am I? What do I like? How does it feel? What, you know, do I need a partner or do I not need a partner? Like, what are these things? And the other thing was that I
Maybe
found,
like, do I desire a partner or do I not desire a partner?
yeah, and letting yourself have these questions and coming to your conclusions, because it literally changes your thought patterns when you go through these like conversations internally, or if you need to journal them out, whatever is your thing, because then you'll come to like this such beautiful internal conclusion that you are so strong in your conviction that it doesn't matter what somebody else says, as in like, oh, and I don't mean this as in like, you know, the way people will often relay religious, I can't even say it, religious information, as in like you can or you can't, or so strong in your conviction that you'll tell other people what to do. It's actually so strong in your conviction so you are fully present. And like this is me. I like these things to the degree so powerfully and consciously that I don't need to voice them. It's strong in my energy. And you've moved consciously and physically, emotionally and energetically through these things that were, you know, triggers and barriers and roadblocks and mysteries and pathways. And you get to this point where you're like, that's new information I didn't know about. Do I care? And it comes back to you. It comes back to the seat where you sit. Like, this is your body and this is your life. And it's not like good or bad. I always try to remind myself, because we are told and ingrained and conditioned so much that there are good and bad people. I honestly don't believe that. I think there are good people who make good and bad choices. Like, even when you watch, like, I watched some Netflix serial killer stuff the other day, and I should not have, but you've got to expose yourself sometimes to information because that's reality. And if you were honestly walking through life naive and didn't know anything, then you're not prepared to be walking and living through common life, right? I'm not saying go watch those things, but
I can't.
if you look at some of the stuff that these people went through or their childhood, they made a choice, and whether they're being responsible or not. But when you were born, you were not born evil. You were not. You were born as love. You are born as love, no matter what. That's how people. That's like that spark where they're like, oh, it's one in whatever is the 0.00 chance of being a person. It's because that was the spark of love that created you. That energy and that moment and that consciousness created you, and you were meant to be here. And I just think it's incredible to just look at life and say it's a yes or a no. It's not. It's a choice. Everybody's born in love. And yes, there are other circumstances where there's somebody like have, a neuroconnectivity or a biochemistry, et cetera, et cetera. So there are things where, and I have a term for that. I call it dented love. Like there's like a dent. It just isn't like, it's like a car and it's just got a donk on it. Like it's just not functioning as fully well as it could.
A donk.
And I just think about that person from a place of love. I don't think, oh, that is horrible. I think, wow, what would you be thinking and feeling to make those choices? Oh, and bringing my humanness to this. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to excuse anybody's choices or behaviors at all, but it just means that it doesn't discredit or take away or like draw a line in the sand as though people are not valuable or worthy when they are born. Situations happen. Things are good or bad. I think that's important.
You already know this, but I'm going to just make a quick statement so that when people watch this and they see how things just shifted for me, they'll understand. I recently lost a very close friend, and he was killed. So as you were talking, it just kind of hit me. So I'm trying to regather myself. It's the end of our show anyway, so I was getting ready to wrap up. So I think I'll just take this moment to wrap up then for us, if you're good with that.
Yeah.
Okay. So to just kind of bring everything full circle, if you're having any challenges in your sex life, first and foremost, reconnect with yourself. Give yourself some love, some grace. Feel into it. And as both me and Hayley gave examples, it doesn't necessarily have to start with sexual stuff. You can experience pleasure and orgasmic pleasure in other areas of your life first, as you're getting eased into that. I think a great topic for next week would be to take it a step further and talk about the energetics of sex, because one of the things we kind of brought up early on today was about the chemistry and stuff between people. Mm-hmm. And I think that would be okay. So we're going to plan on talking about that next week. So make sure you like and follow so that you get notifications for next week. And that will be our subject. Thank you so much for joining us today. As always, if you have any comments or questions or suggestions for future show topics, please leave them in the comments below. Thank you for joining.